Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro.
Countdown to all planets direct in 3, 2, 1. Yes, we are so happy to tell you that retrograde season, at least for the inner planets, and actually all planets for a little while, is coming to an end. This week, Mercury turns direct on April 7th, and then on Saturday, Venus turns direct, which means we'll have absolutely no planets retrograde again until May 4th. Welcome to AstroTwins Radio. It's the week of April 7th to 13th. Tali here in Seattle.
And Ophi in New York. And just want to chime in and say it will be the first time this entire year, once Venus goes direct, that we won't have any retrogrades. Literally, we began the year with Mars retrograde, then spun into Venus and Mercury. So we don't even know a 2025 without a retrograde, and boy, does that imitate life. So, yeah, we got lots to talk about this week.
So much to talk about this week, yeah. Well, first up is Mercury to turn direct this Monday, April 7th. Both Venus and Mercury followed a similar astrological sign-based retrograde pattern. They began the retrograde in Aries, which is the very first sign, known for being impulsive, aggressive, combative, novel, renegade, and also very self-focused. And then they each, midway through, backed up into Pisces, the very last sign of the zodiac, which is more about selflessness or illusions. What's going on here? Where are the boundaries? What's actually happening below the surface? With Aries, everything is like full frontal, in your face, and with Pisces, it's very backstage, which, after this week of these mysterious WTF tariffs, which we'll talk about later, of course, we could not talk about them. No one really knows what is going on. What's the plan? So Mercury started its retrograde in Aries on March 15th, and then on March 29th, it slipped back into Pisces. So as it turns direct in Pisces this Monday, it's going to be more in a forward flowing motion in terms of the information we're going to be able to understand. It's going to remain direct in Pisces until April 16th. Then it goes back into Aries for a few weeks until early June. So, what happens during Mercury retrograde is on a, astronomy level, it's like Mercury is passing the Earth in its orbit. Mercury takes 88 days to go around the sun. So it zips by a lot faster, and it passes us 3 times a year. And for 3 weeks, it's almost like 2 trains moving at different speeds, when one seems to be, that optical illusion of it moving backwards. And during that time, all things that Mercury rules in astrology, commerce, data, information, our mental processes, our scheduling, all get thrown out of whack.
Yeah, and that's true for any retrograde. That is what the effect is, that optical illusion. But since in astrology we measure what we see from our vantage point on Earth, when it looks like the planet's going backwards through our zodiac wheel in the measurement system, then it's retrograde, and that's how we look at it. So, we have Venus retrograde too until Saturday. It goes direct alongside the Libra full moon. So Venus retrograde began on March 1st in Aries, slipped back into Pisces March 27th. So we get a double dose of each of these inner planets, Mars, Mercury, and Venus, all started the retrogrades in fire signs, slipped back into water signs.
True.
And the way I describe a post-retrograde is like So imagine you were walking out of your house, you walked halfway down the block, realized you forgot your phone, turned around and walked back. That's the retrograde. And then you have to rewalk all of those steps to recover the lost time and then keep going to your destination. So when you start rewalking after you go get your phone, that's what it's like when the planet is direct. So it goes back over the same terrain that it reversed through. So we have so we get a double dose of Mercury in Aries, Venus in Aries, and Mars in Leo, where it started the retrograde before going into Cancer on January 6th, all ahead in this spring, summer time coming up.
First, we have to deal with the retracing of the steps in water signs. So we're still Mars in Cancer until April 18th.
Yep.
And now Venus on Saturday will go direct in Pisces. Mercury goes direct in Pisces on Monday. So it's true
Let's talk about what water is, that kind of emotional, flowy, some of the passive aggressive stuff, like today, Elon Musk and Peter Navarro, who are both Cancers, water signs, are seeming to throw shade at each other about the tariffs. We're not going to say more than that about that, but it's this kind of bitchy, cranky energy sometimes, with a retrograde in a water sign, whereas in a fire sign, it's more aggressive and overt and like, oh yeah, you want to go? So it's
but I think what you said about that metaphor about retracing your steps is what we're going to be doing this spring. So much has happened that we're still unpacking and haven't even had a chance to, because it's been one thing after another. Mars retrograde began December 6th, 2 days after Luigi Mangione murdered the United Healthcare CEO. We had the inauguration, we had the LA fires. We're still assessing the damage of all of it. We've had storms in the Midwest this past week. Doge, now RFK Jr. smashing through healthcare here, and the tariffs, the stock market plummet. It's like, so, it's been hard on the system, hard on the emotions, hard to keep up.
And I really felt that last week too. I'd say like with Mercury and Venus both backing into Pisces and Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, proceeding into Aries, all within 4 days of each other. Because on March 30th, Neptune left Pisces and went into Aries. It's this Aries, Pisces, Alpha, Omega dance. Aries is the first sign, Pisces is the last. So even just coming up with what to talk about today, it was like an endless rabbit hole of things. I was like, there's no bottom here. So if your last week has felt almost like foggy, spacey, overwhelming in ways, March was hard in a lot of ways, but the energy was very hard in that like Aries, fiery, like constant mental attack way. And this past week is just more like, whoa, I just feel dizzy from everything I'm reading. I mean, it's been great in some ways, like Cory Booker speaking for 25 hours. That was so Neptune and Aries, really at its finest. Like Aries is the orator. And I love that he actually dehydrated himself, being that Pisces and Neptune rule hydration and water, and in order to speak, which is Mercury. So, I mean, I made an Instagram about it. There's more in there about this moment in his chart that was perfect for him. But there's so much to say about everything right now. But, just for you personally, because you could feel really ungrounded and unanchored by everything going on. If you don't, I don't even know what, good for you. Please share your secrets. But if you are, this week can start to move toward a little bit of balancing. Like this is one of those weeks where it's like, how they, if you're in recovery or dealing with like a traumatic event in your life where it's like, just for today, or just get through the next 24 hours. We're not saying to bury your head in the sand in any way. We're just the protests and everything that happened are just kind of warming a lot of people up. But do do not neglect your day-to-day life, because as the inner planets, which rule our daily lives and routines, go out of retrograde and start to move forward, that you can start to find a little more, or hopefully a lot more, personal power in your immediate day-to-day environment, closest relationships, and that kind of thing. And that matters. That is the glue that keeps our feet on the ground, ready to
Well,
fight when needed.
and we have a full moon in Libra on Saturday, which is the
Yeah.
sign of balance. So it is about balancing the two worlds. Like, it's really important that we do our self-care, that we make sure we get out and walk, move your body, eat healthy foods, don't get too hungry, lonely, or tired, as they say in recovery, but also that we stay aware. We have, and Saturday is a big day this week because of the fact that we have the Libra full moon. The sun makes its annual conjunction, its annual cazimi with Chiron, the wounded healer comet in Aries, that self-sovereign fighter. So, like, where do you get to be, that peaceful warrior, that healing warrior, you know, whatever, maybe it's not peaceful. That's Libra full moon. Like, where is it appropriate to fight and do so with this Chiron's wounded healer energy? Like, I have a purpose for this. I'm not just
Well,
out
here's the
here.
recommendation where not to fight, where you might be tempted to, is at home or with your family, because that
Mm.
full moon is going to be in what's called a T square, which is a three-way tug of war with Mars, the warrior, in Cancer, the sign of home and family, and the Sun and Chiron in Aries. So I, I could foresee a lot of scenarios where you want to find peace and ease conflict, but there's also tension at home. I mean, God knows, with, all the stuff happening in the economy, probably families and people who are trying to provide and make a living will be under stress. And then just the sun and Chiron, like, at what cost am I keeping the peace? It's the Passover holiday and Easter week ahead after this full moon too. So a lot of people are going on spring break, going to see their families, and this full moon is definitely setting the stage as Venus does go out of retrograde and helps us resolve things. You're not going to be able to sweep everything under the rug. It's going to be a unique existential
And
challenge.
I'm thinking about how Mars and Cancer also affects people's savings, their nest egg, and
Yeah.
this impact. Maybe, Trump told everyone to hang tough and is basically claiming that he crashed the market on purpose. I know what I'm doing here, but the impact on people who want to retire now, who, have lost everything or have had just a steep loss in what they're able to draw on for themselves to live on, is devastating for a lot of people. And again, this may be what provokes, that the action that's coming with this T square here with the
Yeah.
Sun and Chiron in Aries, Mars in Cancer, and this full moon in Libra. It's like
I think leaders are going to be,
cardinal T square too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Leaders
So
emerging,
leaders
innovative
emerging, or
leaders.
some accountability. But it's just, it just blows my mind, because it's and we're going to get into Jupiter and Gemini in a little bit, and how it's kind of this overarching theme of 2025 so far, and the entire second half of 2024. So pretty much from the election, peak time, starting with the debate between Biden and Trump right before that at the end of June last year, going to now, it's like, this is such a wild era. Like, but it's just amazing to watch people still think, oh, we don't know what Donald Trump is going to do. He's got something else. Maybe he knows what he's doing. It's like, yes, we do know. What has he done systematically? He has, at universities, with businesses, he's bullied and scared people into compliance. And, you know, you want to have DEI, then you're going to be punished. You want to have protests on your campus, you're going to be punished. I mean, it's a punitive time. So
punitive, manipulative, power grab. It's just an abuse of power and resources that
and that's the Pluto and Capricorn to Aquarius transition has brought that on. So he is kind of the poster person, messenger of an energy that we need to do better. We need to do better than this with Lilith, as we talked about on last week's episode, now in Scorpio. We'll see how that goes. But let's get back to Venus a little bit.
I want to talk about
there's
Venus.
so much. We told you so. Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say about Lilith and Scorpio, the last time Lilith was in Scorpio was in 2017 and 2016. And we had the Women's March, which is still the largest single day protest in U.S. history. Well, things are starting to pick up again. We had the hands-off rallies that drew over 200,000 people. They're reporting now the numbers are still rolling in, so it might be more across the country. So it's more akin to when people were going to airports to protest the Muslim ban and things. So I think this new wave of protests is going to start again now that Lilith is in Scorpio. But yeah, backing up to Venus, and even a little bit of Lilith in Scorpio, because that's bringing some renewed erotic energy and connection in for us. But the end of Venus retrograde is kind of a time to review what's been happening in love and your personal life. Venus retrograde is super interesting because it repeats in the same signs every 8 years. It only happens in like 5 signs or sometimes pairs of signs, and it'll repeat and then move back 2 degrees in the zodiac 8 years later. There's a real sacred geometry pattern to it. I think we have a post on AstroStyle about that I'll have to
the five-pointed star.
The five-pointed star of Venus retrograde. It's fascinating. If you were to trace its retrogrades over this 8-year cycle, it actually moves through the zodiac in the shape of a 5-pointed star, Venus being the sign of beauty. It's really incredible. So the last time it was retrograde in Pisces and Aries was in March and April of 2017, the beginning of that first Trump term. And we won't have it again for another 8 years. But on a very personal level, this Venus and Aries and Pisces retrograde put the focus on our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with our spirituality, our boundaries, self-sovereignty. Where do we balance that time for ourselves and the time that we blend into another? How do we find? There was a lot of forgiveness work, I think, that may have been done. I've heard people talk about how they made time to connect to themselves and their spirituality. I mean, for myself, I'm feeling like way more connected to, like, my own woo in ways that I've been having dreams, like memorable dreams like never before. One where Beyonce even taught me how to put on eye makeup in a special way. It was crazy, but I actually tried it. It worked,
Makeup tips from Beyonce, from your subconscious,
from the subconscious,
beyond the veil.
Yeah, but we have 18 months before the next Venus retrograde. The next one is in the completely opposite side of the zodiac, in Scorpio and Libra. That starts October 3rd of 2026. So we don't have to worry about another one this year. But I think, like, keep working with the energy of what you've learned, what's opened up for you around self-sovereignty, boundaries, high functioning codependence. We can't say enough good things about our friend Terry Cole's book, Too Much. Just where do you draw the line? Because when that next Venus retrograde comes around, I think it's going to open up a new passageway into relationships. Relationships are hard right now. People are polarizing.
That's what I noticed. I noticed people, like, my female friends are like Time with my girls, awesome. Time alone, great. But a lot of relationships blew up that I heard about that were like where someone was really just being dishonest, that kind of thing. Like I heard
Well,
about.
cis hetero ones have been especially hard.
Oh
We've got
God,
men
yeah.
going into the manosphere and women going boy sober and 4B. Like, it's just like, just people are
Yeah.
fed up with, and I know that's happening on the margins largely too, but I don't know. I just feel like people are like, I just don't even want to deal with relationships. Although all my queer friends are having the time of their lives. So good on you. We need to learn from you here,
Yeah. Well, whatever the case, Venus retrograde definitely tested the boundaries of, yeah. I definitely heard some toxic masculinity stories about kind of some of the women dating bros for sure. I think pretty much across the board. Haven't done an official study with a large enough data sampling, but word on the street is that Venus retrograde was an awesome time to be on your own and not that great. I'm thinking about Meghan Markle and how, she sold out of all of her products in half an hour,
Did
or
she?
something like that. Yeah, and
Oh,
she,
good.
she dropped her show and while it got panned, a lot of us were secretly making single skillet spaghetti.
I guess Harry and Meghan are sticking together no matter what, and good for them. Hey, look, Venus retrograde isn't always bad for love. For some couples, it's actually a chance to really work through and go deeper into, issues that maybe you set aside for a while. You have to think about what actually happens during a Venus retrograde because, unlike Mercury retrograde, where there's that illusion, during a Venus retrograde, Venus switches from being an evening star, meaning you can see it in the sky at dusk, to a morning star, and it goes invisible in the middle. So Venus was an evening star wind down, helping us put old love stories and limiting beliefs to bed until from March 1st to 22nd. Then it disappeared during this Cazimi, this conjunction with the sun, for 5 days. Then March 27th, it came back as a morning star where it'll be for 9 months. And we have a chance to wake up and rewrite these stories that we have about love in a way that is in the spirit of Pisces and Aries, where it's like, what is a personal fairy tale that I can write for myself in that very romantic Piscean way that also allows me to pursue my Aries individual goals, my desires? How can I be part of a fairy tale where I don't have to lose myself in the process? And I think we'll all be working on that for the next 18 months when
It's such a
Venus goes
funny thing.
retrograde
There's so
again.
much contrast to think about. Fairy tale romance, the death of democracy, the world is on fire, but yet my personal life is going great. But that is the
Right.
duality right now that a lot of people are living in. And let's be honest, people didn't stop having babies during wars and depressions and all the things that have happened. So, our relationships continue to be a theme no matter what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, and I think they really need to be because we're not going to be able to maybe afford to escape down, TikTok shops, wormholes, and expensive dinners and isolating from each other because things are about to get a whole lot more expensive. And there's some,
If there even is a TikTok, after
yeah,
a
I mean, the
while.
stock market plummeted 2,200 points last Friday after the so called Day of Liberation tariffs were announced on April 2nd. And you'd have to be living under a rock to not know about those. There are reports circulating that Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk each lost $23 billion. And that's got to hit them. We're talking billions. They lost that in stock. And Ophi said, we're not going to talk about it anymore. But I do have to note that Elon Musk has now, at the end of these retrogrades, now he's fighting with Trump's trade advisor who loves tariffs, Peter Navarro. Had to do a little digging on him. If you listen to Rachel Maddow at all, her podcast this week talks about Peter Navarro, who is a July 15th Cancer. Elon Musk is, I think, June 28th, 27th. I hope he doesn't have the same birthday as Lux, but he's a late June Cancer. Elon Musk is saying Peter Navarro hasn't built shit. And Elon Musk is saying he wants free trade with zero tariffs between the US and Europe now. So he's breaking from the Trump regime, perhaps. But again, illusions will dog us. But Peter Navarro, if you listen to Rachel Maddow, you can get some interesting history on the trade advisor, including the fact that and this is documented all the way back to 2019, he wrote a book, Death from China.
It was Death by China.
Death by China.
He rearranged the letters in his name to come up with a fictional, tariff expert or something who, it was really just...
What is it? Ron
Vera or something like that. But he quotes the guy all through the book, this fictional guy, but only in little fine print is it noted this is not a real person. So Ron Vera has been thought of as a real person, apparently, and his quote-unquote policies, which are, and ideas for policies, rather, are the work of Peter Navarro, it turns out.
He has a Harvard PhD in economics. So there's so many.
So why did you need to come up with a fictional alter ego?
True to all the machinations of retrogrades. We don't even know why these tariffs fully are going on. It's the year of the snake, too, when things get shrouded in secrecy. There's manipulation. There's snake charming. But Ophi, you did some really fascinating digging into a similar trend happening with Jupiter and Gemini.
We may not know why. We may not know exactly what. But what we can do as astrologers is look at the patterns in the stars then and now. And I made 2 Instagram videos about this, one mid-March and one right at the end of March, right before quote-unquote Liberation Day on April 2nd. And but we've been writing about this since 2024 in our book. We track Jupiter, which moves into a new sign for about a year, once a year. And we knew Jupiter was headed into Gemini late May 2024 until June 9th of 2025. So we looked back at prior cycles of Jupiter and Gemini, and one of the key cycles was June 13th of 1929 to June 28th of 1930. And I found 3 key moments, but let's talk about Jupiter's role quickly. Jupiter is the global planet, and it is in what's called detriment, a very uncomfortable position when it spends a year in Gemini, because Gemini is local, regional, neighborhoods. Jupiter is global and international. So we have this international ambassador trying to, function within this very small town kind of energy. So it's a mismatch. And what it has given rise to during many of those transits is protectionism, which is when a government starts to make policies restricting international trade with the hope of helping domestic industries. And we see that happening now. So on June 13th, 1929, Jupiter went into Gemini, starting the year-long visit. And 5 days later, on June 18th, was the passage of the Undesirable Aliens Act, which was criminalizing people crossing the Mexican border illegally and a whole bunch of deportation and everything like that.
Sounds familiar.
And then in October, a couple weeks after Jupiter went retrograde, October 24th was Black Thursday, and that was the Wall Street stock market crash and the start of the Great Depression, one of the videos I made was that Jupiter, right at the beginning of April and the end of March of this year, was at the exact same degree of Gemini that it was then. So we are hoping for history not to repeat itself with the Great Depression, please no.
But you also made a really good point in that video that part of the reason for Black Thursday, that October market crash that led to the Great Depression, was because of the fear and pandemonium stirred up by the media, which is very
Ruled
Jupiter
by
and Gemini,
Gemini.
that disinformation, and that
Yeah.
definitely is happening right now.
Yeah,
You
just all the
predicted
mixed
that a couple weeks ago.
messages, right. Is it, is this happening or is the opposite happening? Like, I don't know. And then at the very end, in the final week on June 17th of 1930, Herbert Hoover signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. I keep seeing that coming up with a lot of people talking about it. So he responded to pressure from his party and business leaders and signed a bunch of tariffs, hoping to bolster domestic employment and manufacturing in the United States. And instead, just like is happening now, the trade partners retaliated with their own tariffs, and uh, global trade and U.S. exported goods plummeted. So this is not just a cautionary tale for economists to tell, but also astrologers. There's some quote going around likening, like, Trump as a leader is like astronomy to astrology. So middle finger up to whoever added
Yeah,
that one
right.
in, because
I
we
know.
know astrologers aren't the ones trying to claim we're astronomers. Okay, so step off, because without us tracking this stuff,
I know. That was my
anyway.
boo for Rachel Maddow. She had
Yeah,
that on
she
her
she did
podcast. I was
read
like,
that quote. It was
"Oh,
like,
Rachel, you're such an Aries and
right,
a Cancer South node too." She's nuts.
not be more on brand for her
Oh my
sign.
God,
So,
she really is. I
but
know. It's
if you're listening to this, you know. But I get what they were trying to say here. So it's just, history hopefully isn't repeating itself entirely, but we are
yeah.
experiencing
I mean,
echoes,
what
very
you
loud
said
echoes.
earlier was, this is a bullying tactic too. Because, if the whole point is to try to move manufacturing here, I was reading how a lot of people have been building factories, and now these tariffs are slowing down construction because they need supplies,
To
steel,
actually
wood to
build the
actually build the
factory.
factories. I mean, Biden passed the CHIPS Act to get semiconductors, some chips manufactured here because they're only made in Taiwan right now. That's the only place in the world that has a factory that can produce the chips that we need for basically everything, cars, devices. So we're building them here. That's such a specific need, requirements for temperature and cleanliness in order to create them. So yeah, thanks a lot for upending everything there. It's just,
Right. Like, it would, sure, domestic manufacturing sounds like a great idea, but there's just no way, like, like we are living in a post Pluto and Sagittarius world since 2008. We are a global society. It's too late to end globalism, in my
right.
opinion. I mean, again, I'm not an
And that's a
economist,
difference
but
between now and 1929, 1930. There were also another period of time that we need to talk about. When we started talking about it last week, and if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, definitely go back, because we are tracking this huge transit that began on Sunday, March 30th, Neptune, the planet of the imagination, of dreams, of boundlessness, of spirituality, moved into a new sign. Aries hasn't been there since the very day after the Civil War began in 1861. It's a 14-year cycle, so it's a long one. So that was abolitionism, suffrage. We have some great conversations and data about that from last week. But it was also the beginning of the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age was a term that Mark Twain, a fellow Sag, quipped to say that it was a time where everything looked gold on the surface, but you could basically, sand it off and find crap
Gold-plated
under. Yeah,
era.
it was a gold-plated era, definitely. So, but that was a time when the robber barons emerged. Four men who basically had a monopoly on all of the industries. J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, Cornelius Vanderbilt, who we actually mentioned last week as the funder of Victoria Woodhull, the first woman to run for president, funny enough. And who was the last robber baron? Also, John D. Rockefeller. So they had monopolies on all the industries. This was also the time when the rail started to move people around. People could sail to Paris and to go to a courtier to get their dresses made for their fancy parties. Actually, I really do love the Gilded Age on HBO with Carrie Coon, who's in White Lotus. Hello, season finale. We won't talk about that till next week, but no spoilers there. But yeah, the Gilded Age was a time where they called them robber barons because they had like control and monopolies, like I said, over all these industries. Were just living large, and they were the one percenters of their time, while other people were working in factories and struggling to get by. So we kind of have these four modern day robber barons right now: Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, and I'd count Trump as one of them, even though he's not up there with, he has enough power to make him basically wealthy, one of the wealthiest. He has a grip, he has a monopoly on power right now. And so ah ah it's like I
know, we're
just
like,
want to give
how
people
do
some
we-
good news, and we keep going down. It's like the pendulum swing of this year. It's like we've got the push towards action and movement and real social change, which is what the stars are saying. Pluto and Aquarius, revolution is coming, but there's also this just like extreme Plutonian grip on power, technology, the tech oligarchs, the tech robber barons who want to live in their Gilded Age, or they're sending their fiancés up into space. Lauren Sanchez, fiance of Jeff Bezos, is crewing the first all-female Blue Origin 11-minute flight into space on April 14th. So I was worried that they were going to go up during Mercury and Venus retrograde. It's like, please no,
I mean, at least one of those women, I know Katy Perry likes astrology, but at least one of those women had better not think that astrology and astronomy mean you don't have to check your damn horoscope and retrograde calendar before launching into space. Because I'm sorry to say, there have been some NASA shuttle explosions. It happened with Mercury retrograde. We tracked them.
I know. We can't, it's like who's Gail King is going up, Aisha Bowe, who's a bioastronautics research scientist, a civil rights activist, Amanda Nguyen, and a filmmaker, Carrie Ann Flynn. So that's Katy Perry too, and Lauren. So it's it's a solid crew of women, even though they're kind of glamming up with it and getting like they were on the cover of Elle and talking about like their lashes and hair extensions in space. And
there's something so like legally blonde about it. That's just like, do we have to like fluff up everything? There are actually like real trained astronauts who are women. It just feels like a publicity stunt.
And of course it is.
I mean, it is one, but but
robber barons, sent their wives to Paris on ships to get fitted for dresses for their cotillions, and now
oligarchs send their fiancés to a different G-force. Hopefully,
if you can't do it in the bedroom, you got to do it in another. Yeah. What's the effect going to have on Filler on the way down? It's going to be interesting to see. It's not easy to go up and down in space. But anyways, we wish them well on their flight. And, you know, even though we went to space camp in 5th grade, I am still afraid of heights. So this astrologer, is not going to do what Katy Perry is planning to put the ass in astronaut. She
I
thought
think
that
that
was so
was what
funny.
did it for me when she said, I'm like, come on.
You are putting the
sisters.
ass
You
in
don't
astronaut.
have to do this.
Right.
You can do this like an intelligent, I mean, like, have fun, sure, make it a little glamorous, great, but like this compulsory, I'm sorry, Venus is still retrograde and I'm pissed.
When they come back down from Earth, I hope that they bring some attention to the Save Act. We have to talk about that, because this may be brought to the floor this week while Venus is retrograde. This is a bill that Republicans are trying to bring to the floor for a vote, very Heritage Foundation, very Project 2025, that has all these new voting requirements. One of them is that the last name on your ID, and they have a limited list of IDs, has to match your birth certificate for you to vote, which means women who have legally changed their names for marriage won't be able to vote unless they then go legally change their name back, which most women aren't going to do. Now, the Heritage Foundation thinks the man of the house should vote with their hyper conservative views and values. So that's disturbing beyond words. That would be just a horrifying thing to happen. Total Gilead, Handmaid's Tale. It's just another insane
turn back time. That's what it's like, and that's also that's
part
the
of Project
crazy
2025,
duality
though.
of everything. It's like, oh wow, women in space. Oh, but here on this planet, they're getting screwed. So if you don't make that launch into space a statement for women's rights on the planet that you took off from 11 minutes ago, then I just have nothing to say about this. Like, that's, I mean.
Literally send Elon to Mars is a bumper sticker I saw, and it's like the best idea ever. Can they all just leave the planet? We'll be better off without you. Leave Greenland alone. Leave the people of Greenland. They don't want you. Just go to Mars. Go to those red, fiery mountains.
That's where they say men are from. So bros are from Mars. And women right now are from Venus retrograde. So we still, you know what? And Lilith is in Scorpio. So if you're pissed off, that don't apologize for it. I think, just so, I'm going to be biased today, I guess. I'm going to be a Sagittarius here in these final hours.
We're literally talking about things that are happening, and, they directly impact anyone who's not a robber baron or within 1 degree of separation of them in many ways. It's just like we're all like the stock market crash even affected the robber barons, and I don't know if they're planning to buy low. Oh, there's a theory that you crash the stock market, then everyone buys US Treasury bonds, and then that then flows into repaying the federal debt, and then interest rates come down. Well, that's not a bad idea, but why crash the stock market? Why not come up with if you can rally people around making America great again, the patriotic thing to do, invest in treasury bonds. You have a stable source of retirement. Everyone wins. Like, we can do this differently. We can do this with a win-win, with a cooperative strategy. Like, people, it's just this whole idea. It's like there's this unevolved brain, this unevolved thinking that everything has to be done with this strongman aggression and fighting, and that human beings aren't capable of coming together. There are people trying to destroy that, the shadow of Pluto and Aquarius. We're in the next 19 years, Pluto is kind of that phoenix rising from the ashes. So we see these attempts to destroy democracy, community, all these Aquarian ideals, but we're right at the beginning. I don't think it's going to happen. I want to believe it's not going to happen. I want to believe in the human
There's
spirit.
always a destruction element at the beginning of every Pluto
Pluto.
cycle. So 2008, when it went into Capricorn, which ruled the economy, we had a huge,
Mortgage crisis.
yeah, so we had a whole
Ursa.
crash. And then, now democracy, which is ruled by Aquarius, got hit by the wrecking ball at the beginning of Pluto's long settling in for 20 years. So, yeah, we can only go up, I hope, from here.
They were
So-
not wrong that, it was not, that it is. I mean, Elon Musk was right that it was going to be painful for a while, but unfortunately, it's a self-induced pain and an avoidable pain. But astrologically, we're repeating some cycles where there were some of the greatest historical changes that came from them.
But
And
also the Civil War was one of the bloodiest and most, violent wars. So that's Aries. Neptune is the compassion and the healing and the transformation. So we're in this duality again. The ruler of Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, is in Aries now, the first sign of the zodiac. So it's there for a sneak preview until October 22nd. So we, this is what we name the year of the divine pendulum. We're going to remind you every week, the first half of the year or part of the year until late spring and summer is when the pendulum is going to swing into another direction and it's going to make more sense. So if things don't make sense to you now, maybe they're not. I don't think we're at the point where they are. We're doing our best to help you make sense of it through the stars, but do lean into your relationships with Mercury and Venus going direct this week, and communication and interpersonal harmony improving. Definitely load up on that. Load up on
and information is going to start coming to light very much so as these
for sure.
retrogrades end. I think it's going to be shocking in some ways, but also very much like, oh wow, okay, now that
that's
I
what was
see
going
what you're
on.
doing, I get it now. It's like that shrouding, that secrecy that retrogrades allow is lifting. The next one to go retrograde is Pluto in Aquarius, but not till May 4th. So,
And it's not an inner planet affecting our day-to-day lives. Those are the hardest retrogrades. So, just like they're saying, yeah, you gotta suck it up and eat your vegetables. Well, we're almost done eating those vegetables for the first quarter of 2025 into April. At least let's hope. So without belaboring this anymore, we would love to have you follow us on Instagram, where we do little mini videos about this stuff. We're AstroTwins on there. And if you'd like to book an astrology chart reading during these trying times of uncertainty, we have a few slots available for full-length birth chart readings. We'll drop the link in the show notes.
astrostyle.com/readings. Very simple, very straightforward too.
Yeah. So we have we've added a few more slots because we know that people are definitely needing that support now more than ever. So, and of course, our 2025 horoscope book is there for you to guide you through the whole year. So if you don't have a copy yet, you didn't miss a window. It is relevant for every single day of this year. It talks about all the big trends. The year of the divine pendulum is our theme. The outer planet changes that are coming in May and July. Uranus and Gemini for the first
Big
time
deal.
since the 1940s. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as Ben Franklin, one of those founding fathers whose words seem to be being forgotten, said. And we highly recommend arming yourself with that information. That is going to be one of your best defenses for the rest of Jupiter and Gemini and beyond. So wishing
is
you a
it
good
June
week.
9th yet? That's when Jupiter goes into Cancer.
Exactly. Wishing you a a good week ahead, in spite of all the roller coaster riding, and happy full moon, end of retrogrades, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.